When I was 11 years old, I was given a small red Bible, like many school children are in the country where I live. I never read it. It sat on my shelf and did nothing. I lent it to a friend of mine once. He used some of the pages at the back to roll up a cigarette because the paper's quite thin. But I'd never read it. Once when I was 13, I went through a copy of the Bible trying to find all the places where people have sex, because someone had told me that that's what happened in there. And I did that. It wasn't a particularly exciting experience, and it certainly didn't help me spiritually. But apart from that, I never thought about the Bible and I never read it. When I began my journey of asking the question, is there a God? Is it possible that it's true? My friend who was a Christian gave me a Bible and challenged me to have a read. The Bible is quite a long book. It's an old book, and there's some stuff in there that's a bit weird. But for reasons at the time I didn't understand, it continues to be the best-selling book in the world every year. It's outsold every other book 10, 20, 30, 100 times over. It's the most translated book in the world. And as I began to explore it, my question was, is it true? When I chat to people and we talk about the Bible, they often say to me a number of reasons why they think the Bible shouldn't be trusted or isn't a book worth taking seriously. The first is that it's out of date. The secondly is that it's historically inaccurate. And the third reason is that it's full of contradictions. Now, of course, the Bible's an old book when people say it's out of date, but lots of things are old, doesn't make it out of date. The problem often is that the bit of the Bible that we've ever heard is a translation that's maybe tens or hundreds of years old, certainly in English. Many people are familiar with reading a Bible that was translated 400 years ago at the same time as Shakespeare, and they think, oh, it's just an out-of-date book. But as I began to read a modern translation of the Bible into my language, English, it spoke to me. It was alive, it was real, it made sense. It wasn't out of date. And then people say it's historically inaccurate. Now, I used to live in central London, just near the British Museum. And sometimes on a Saturday when I was walking nearby, rather than walking around the streets, I actually went through the back door of the British Museum and cut through and came out the front door. It was a slight shortcut, but I took a different route every time and went through a different gallery. And sometimes I walked through the main galleries that are on the ground floor, the Assyrian, the Egyptian and the Babylonian galleries. And if you go to the British Museum on a Saturday, you'll see people having tours around the museum. And if you get closer to the tours and tag on the back, which saves you having to pay for them, you realise that some of them are being conducted by people that are talking about the Bible. They're being done by groups such as Christians or the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're going around and showing people the archaeological evidence that you see in the British Museum and showing how it confirms much that's in the Bible. And from a historical point of view, I discovered that the Bible and history work well together. The Bible is a good piece of history. And the third objection that people raised was that there are contradictions in the Bible. Things don't match up. Now, whenever someone says that to me, I will then respond and say, okay, could you tell me a contradiction that you're aware of in the Bible? Now, no one has ever yet been able to share one with me. They've heard the idea that there's contradictions there, but don't actually have any of them and often haven't read the Bible. Now, I could tell you a few things that can appear to be contradictions in there, but as I looked at some of those things that looked like they might contradict, I realized that there were perfectly reasonable ways of explaining those things that made sense. And as I read the Bible more, I discovered that it was consistent, it was powerful, it worked historically, and above all, it began to speak to me. And I discovered that it was changing me. The words made sense and began to paint a picture of who God was. And so that was the next piece of evidence for me as I went on this journey towards God, the fact that the Bible works and is real. And my invitation and my encouragement to you is have a read, have a look, take a look at the Bible and ask yourself the question, could it be true? Does it make sense? is it historically accurate? And my feeling is that you'll come to the conclusion that the Bible works.